Awesome.
Hello, everybody. Hello. How are we doing? How are we doing? Everybody had lunch? Good lunch? All right. Awesome. Well, my name is Matt Gibbons, and I'm the Principal Solutions Engineer with Dynatrace, and I'm lucky to be joined by one of my esteemed colleagues, Shannon, as well as one of our esteemed colleagues from AWS, Raj. What we will be talking about today is the automated cloud security remediation with agentic workflows. Pretty loaded title, right? Anybody has any idea what we'll be talking about? It's definitely going to be AI. I mean, we have to talk about AI to stay relevant, right? And we'll be talking about automation. So with that said, let's actually take a look at the agenda. Looking at the agenda, we definitely want to highlight and start with the partnership between Dynatrace and AWS because it has been amazing over the years. We will then dive into today's cloud security challenges, and lastly, we'll then talk specifically about security remediation with agentic workflows. Now, we do have some Q&A at the end, and more than happy to take it if we have time during the session, but if we don't, we will stick after, or you can meet us at the Dynatrace booth, which is booth 575. Well, let's just dive in. We have to start highlighting the key, essentially, highlights of this session. The first one that we will be talking about is the integration of Dynatrace with the AWS Security Hub. If you guys are familiar with Dynatrace, obviously Dynatrace is an observability platform. So we already provide a lot of value to our customers, understanding how your application workloads are performing, how your cloud-native services are performing, whether you have any vulnerabilities in your environment. But obviously you are all here because you guys are AWS customers. That means that a lot of your workloads run in AWS. So what happens when there is a vulnerability in one of your AWS cloud-native services? Maybe some ports are open in one of your EC2 instances that shouldn't be open. Now that integration between the AWS Security Hub and Dynatrace will allow you to have all of your performance and security data in the same observability platform. Once that data is in the same observability platform, this is now where the AI enters the stage. You will be able to use Davis Copilot to actually understand and trigger automation for any detected security vulnerabilities and bottlenecks in your AWS environments. And how is it going to be done? This is where MCP comes into the stage. That integration and that agentic workflow is driven through an MCP protocol in here. So with that said, before we dive into the actual meat and potatoes of how that automation will happen, we have to talk a little bit more about Dynatrace. This is a slide that, I love that word, one of my favorite words out there, the marketecture slide. Because it shows you a little bit of the architecture of the Dynatrace platform, but it's not deep enough, so it overlaps with the marketing. But really what I want you guys to get out of this slide is, Dynatrace is an observability platform that allows you to understand all of your observability data in context of each other to proactively let you know when there are issues in your environment, perform root cause analysis for you automatically, and then trigger those automation remediation actions, whether it is remediating security vulnerabilities or whether it is actually remediating security bottlenecks. Since I mentioned that this is the architecture slide, I know there's probably somebody in here who's wondering how this is really happening. So my next slide lets you guys see a little bit under the hood. How is this really possible that Dynatrace is able to touch the performance data, the security data, the business data, marry all that in context, and at the end of the day actually drive automation? The key answer to that is Grail. The architecture of the Dynatrace platform is the difference from many other vendors that you will see on this floor when it comes to observability. We created our own backend of our platform called Grail. What Grail allows us to do, it allows us to store all of that telemetry that we capture from your environment, whether it's coming from AWS, whether it's coming from your application workloads, whether it's coming from logs, whether it's coming from AWS Security Hub, and have all that data in context of each other. Once we have all that data in context of each other, this is where we're not a point tool anymore. You don't need to have multiple different tools to really tell you what's happening in your environment. You have Dynatrace as your one-stop shop to understand everything about your environment and fulfill all of your observability needs, whether it has something to do with performance or with security, how we'll be able to talking about today. Now, having all the data in context, being able to analyze it, this is now when the key component comes into place, which is automation. Automation is almost a buzzword, right? Like everybody wants to automate everything, but if you have incorrect data, if you have data that doesn't really tell you the full story of your environment, you will start automating mistakes. this is what Dynatrace stops you from doing. Because having all that data and context will be able to really understand what's happening in your environment at all times and drive the remediation actions that are accurate based on the telemetry that we are capturing from your environment, whether it is from application workloads, infrastructure, logs, or like in this case, AWS Security Hub. So with that said, I'll pass it to my colleague from AWS to talk a little bit more about the partnership between Dynatrace and AWS.
Thanks a lot, Matt. So before we continue with the presentation, I would like to talk a bit about the partnership between Dynatrace and AWS. Dynatrace is an advanced technology partner with competencies in AI, Gen AI, machine learning, modernization, and migration. Both Dynatrace and AWS have at least about 10 plus years of partnership with about 100 plus AWS service integrations. And today, the key differentiator between what we have with Dynatrace and AWS is AI-powered automation and advanced observability. So this is what we are going to do a small demo after this presentation. But I just want to highlight that we have like already 100 plus native AWS services, and we have these active integrations in production today. Let me now introduce you to AWS Security Hub, our unified cloud security solution. So what Security Hub does, it's an environment or a platform where you can ingest like vulnerabilities, threats, security controls, network exposures, sensitive data, and once you collect all this data, they are on the back correlated so that you know which one to pick up, which is like of maximum importance to you, which you need to address immediately. And it also has some actionable insights. It gives you like a workflow that tells you like, okay, this is something happening with your environment, and these are some of the workflows available for you. These are some of the remediations available for you. And you can also have integrations with various different applications like Jira or Slack or ServiceNow. So all these integrations are already available for you. So when there is an event or any issue happening with your environment, Security Hub will create all those alerts or all those remediations automatically for you. Finally, the prioritization, right? This is very important. Like if you are getting hundreds and thousands of incidents happening, right? It's very hard for you to pick up which is the right one. So the prioritization will help you to look into the top priority one so that you know which is affecting your business right now. And monitoring the tech security trends. So it's continuously monitoring your environment against like AWS Inspector, Amazon Guard Duty. So all these are available in a single dashboard for you. And finally, you can respond at scale. So like if you have like thousands and thousands of virtual machines working and you have all these exposures coming into Security Hub, it can respond at scale also. And what are the key benefits of AWS Security Hub, right? It prioritizes, as I said, it prioritizes your critical security issues so that you can only look into the top priority one and ensure that it has been addressed properly. It detects, correlates, and then it also has integrations with various, as I mentioned, like Jira, ServiceNow, all those Slack systems, so that the operations teams or the DevOps teams can actually go and look into it. And the main advantage of Security Hub, right, rather than going into individual dashboards like Guard Duty Inspector, you can have Security Hub as just one console where you can have all the like top 10 trends or top highlights happening in just one console, so that you can just concentrate on the main Security Hub console rather than going into all the other applications or other services. So before we get into demo, I will hand it over to Sharon. She will talk about how we are getting all this data from Security Hub, then ingest them into Dynatrace, and then work on the remediations, all those things. Sharon?
Awesome, thank you so much, Raj. So who in here is a cloud security practitioner? Is anybody a security practitioner? Okay, my friends. So are any of you guys doing manual processes to remediate configuration issues now? Yes, 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 okay. So this slide will really resonate with you, right? So today's security cloud challenges. Having a ton of alerts and alert overload is huge, right? All of us have all this information flooded and we're not really sure how to prioritize it, right? So this is where AI and AI workflows are critical now. Manual processes are still in place that are creating bottlenecks and errors across your teams. And again, this is just one of the many challenges you're seeing now. And then having these fragmented workflows that are slowing your response time to critical configuration issues and are creating critical gaps in prioritization and actually your overall security posture coverage. So this is where AWS and Dynatrace can help you out. So using AWS Security Hub to prioritize and understand those critical security posture issues, we're able to port those into Dynatrace using Event Bridge and Lambda, and then using Open Pipeline, which is a Dynatrace feature, we're able to contextualize all of those security alerts and understand their effect against production applications, right? So how important is this actual security alert for me to fix? Very important. And then as Matt mentioned, storing it in Grail, right? So that's how we're able to contextualize it with the rest of the business. And then Dynatrace allows you to visualize, analyze, and of course, auto-remediate, right? Which is the whole purpose of today's flow. So let's talk a little bit about what this architecture could look like. So as we're ingesting these Security Hub events into Dynatrace using OCSF format, we can actually run a workflow to help you prioritize and understand the impact of those issues against your production applications. So that workflow will create that JIRA ticket that will basically roll up all of those high priority issues for one agent to action on. And then using Dynatrace MCP server and Kiro CLI, we're able to actually apply those fixes automatically. Right? So think about an agent running natural language to remediate these issues automatically, and then having those issues closed in AWS Security Hub, and then ultimately closed in Dynatrace. So let's take a look at this live. So what you'll see here is we're in AWS Security Hub, and we see a couple of critical issues here, right? Related to an EC2 instance. So we're going to go into Dynatrace and find the Security Hub integration on our hub. And you'll see all these really great out-of-the-box dashboards, right? So kind of plug and play with us. Once you log in here, you'll see those two issues, and these particular issues are actually a EC2 port that's open, right? So not something we want to have, an EC2 open to the internet. This workflow is running, contextualizing this issue, understanding the production impact, and marrying it in one JIRA ticket with all of your high priority items. So this is happening automatically in the background, no need for human intervention. We can go into JIRA and see that particular critical issue that we were looking at, along with all the other high priority issues that we need to action on. So let's go ahead and auto remediate using Kiro. So we're going to pull up that same JIRA ticket that was automatically created, pull up those high criticality findings, and again, your agent is doing this, not you. We're going to say, hey, can you verify that this is still an issue? And that's what's happening here. We're saying, okay, is that port still open on that EC2? The answer is yes. So we need to go ahead and fix it, right? So from here, we're going to see what it's affecting in Dynatrace against your production app. So how critical is this security issue to the business? And I can see here all the different applications it's impacting and everything. And again, an agent is running this completely autonomously. And then basically all I did was apply the fix. I said, go ahead and patch this, close these ports. And it's completed in 1 second. The last thing we're going to do is verify that our fix has taken place and the security issue is no longer a problem. And what we'll see here is green. Green is good. Green means, yes, we no longer have this security issue. And then we're going to verify now that this is automatically closed in Dynatrace. So again, we went basically like completely autonomously from prioritizing the issue, understanding the impact, to completely auto-remediating. So what we're going to do now is go back to Security Hub and just as a human, verify that these issues are no longer a problem. I can see we went from 7 to 5 critical issues, and that the 2 that we had an issue with are now automatically resolved. Pretty great, right? And then we'll go over to Dynatrace and make sure that those issues are also no longer an issue. And again, totally dropped off our security issue. So an agent completely autonomously did that for you, right? Which is really cool. So what does this mean? In 2 minutes, we went from understanding the issues, prioritizing them, understanding the production and business impact, to auto-remediating them using like basically agentic AI, right? So that gets you speed and time to value. This also gets you efficiency, right? Which is reduction in those configuration errors, basically by marrying that with the Dynatrace observability data. And as our systems, thirdly, as our systems continue to scale and get more complex in the cloud and with AI systems, every business needs a workflow like this in order to speed up their time to value, right? Which ultimately leads us to your acceleration of security posture management within your organization. So if this demo resonated with you, please go ahead and scan our QR codes here to check out the integration on the hub. Yes, I see a few of you scanning. Yes, 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 yes. And then on the right, if you want to check out observability with AWS, go ahead and do that. I'll leave it up for a little bit longer for our friends. Awesome. And let me ask one more question. Who could use this workflow to resolve their issues? Everybody, right? Literally everyone. So if you want to see this live and in action, please stop by booth 575. We'd be happy to talk with you. And thank you guys so much for your time today. Cheers.